What's up YouTube? Mike here from TechnoGI, and today I wanted to do my quick summary and review, or I should say opinion, on the Worldwide Developers Conference. That happened yesterday, as most of you guys should be tracking. Maybe you watched it, maybe you didn't, but for the first time I actually watched the whole thing, and it was actually fairly entertaining. And believe it or not, I know I've been ragging on Apple a lot lately, and I'll probably still continue to do so, but there was actually a lot of great features coming. So I'm just going to kind of go down the line and try and hit them up real quick. First we'll start with OS 10, which they announced it, and the new name is El Capitan, which is kind of a horrible name if you ask me. I thought Yosemite's kind of cool, but the new OS coming in the fall is El Capitan. So like it or love it or hate the name, doesn't really matter, but there are some pretty cool features that came to this. But one thing I thought was kind of ironic and funny is right at the beginning of it, Apple was kind of touting, showing some stats. Hey, this is like the most, OS 10 was the most installed operating system like ever in the history of man, essentially. And then on the bottom, it had Windows 8.1, and it was just a little bitty graph, and of course everybody laughed. But the funny thing, or the ironic thing about El Capitan is all of the cool features were actually taken from Windows, in my opinion. For instance, the biggest update feature is you can snap two apps side by side. You've been able to do that since Windows 7, so I don't know what took Apple so long. And really, the whole WWDC theme should be, you know, better late than never. They should have titled it Better Late Than Never, or Copy and Improve would be the two names they could have used for this. I mean, these features are all great, and I think Apple has done a phenomenal job of optimizing them, but really there's nothing new here. I mean, these are all, you know, 2-3 years late to the game, but I am glad that they implemented them because they're actually, you know, pretty cool. And Apple does have a great way of taking other people's ideas and making them better, essentially improving them. But the big feature that I saw out of El Capitan again is you'll be able to snap two apps side by side, or two programs, which you could have done in Windows 7, you know, so basically 3 years or so. But anyways, they did a really cool job of the way it's optimized. Also in Safari, you can actually pin sites in different tabs now, which you could do the same thing in Windows 8.1. You can pin sites to your actual Metro view and get a live tile as well. They also improved Finder. That's one thing that I really do like about Mac OS. We actually have an iMac. I use it quite a bit, and I do like the Finder feature, and that goes on for iOS as well. I think out of all the platforms out there, and I've used them all, the Finder that you can use in iOS I think is the simplest and probably most optimized. Anyways, the other big update for the Macs is Metal. If you don't know what that is, essentially that's what they used in iOS 8 not too long ago, and it basically improves the game graphics, and essentially it's the same thing that's going to happen with the Mac. So that's actually pretty cool, and kudos there for that. But really, those were the big things for OS 10, aka El Capitan. If I missed something, feel free to leave it in the comments, or something that you thought I should have talked about. But it was actually pretty cool. So like I said, I do have an iMac, so in the fall this will be a free update, so I'll be getting El Capitan and playing with the features more. But like I said, nothing new per se, it just new for Apple. But anyway, moving on to iOS 9, there were some cool additions here in iOS 9. First, there's a new app called News, and essentially it's just Flipboard. They just took Flipboard, renamed it, repackaged it, and improved it. So again, that's kind of Apple's mantra the last few years, but it looks good. But essentially it's Flipboard. The next is Proactive, which again is taking Google Now, renaming it, and improving it. But one thing Apple did emphasize during the event is that they took a shot at Google, talking about we don't data mine your information, you know, and they just he went on a whole dissertation about privacy and referring to Proactive on how they get the data, on how it gleans what it wants to show you, and he basically took a shot at Google. But anyway, that's nor here nor there. But anyway, it's called Proactive, and it essentially is a souped up version of Google Now, but it looked pretty cool. And essentially it also improves Siri. Supposedly makes her 40% more smarter or better at dictation, as far as knowing what you want and understanding what you want. So that was kind of cool. And then talking about the iPad specifically in iOS 9, this is something that I've wanted since the iPad 1, and finally they gave it to us. And that is multitasking, as in true multi-window. So they basically have got something called slide over, which is sort of split view but not quite, and then they've got split view. So with the slide over, you basically essentially bring up what you want on the edge. It looks exactly like TouchWiz, and then you find the app you want, you double tap it, and then it gives you a split view. But the only downside is you can only do split view if you have an iPad Air 2, so it won't work on earlier models. And you can use slide over, which is kind of a miniature split view, like I said, but that'll only work on the Air 1, the 2, and the Mini 2 and the Mini 3. All other devices, older ones, are not supported. And unfortunately, the 6 Plus, which is more than large enough of a phone to do this, none of these carry over to that. So you can't do slide over or split view on the iPhone 6 Plus, which is kind of a bummer. And the other thing, cool thing they added, which again, this came straight from the jailbreak community. Ironically, I did a video about 3 months ago talking about how to make your iPad more efficient or use it as a computer. And it's a jailbreak called Video Pane. And this is exactly Video Pane to a T. Looks exactly the same interface, same controls. So I'm hoping, I don't know the jailbreak developer's name who made Video Pane, but hopefully, you know, he got a kickback from Apple, because it's a great app, great concept, and now you'll be able to do it. But of course they changed the name and they call it picture in picture. But if you watched any of the WWDC highlights, you'll see the little demos of it. If I've got time, I'll try and throw some in so you can see it. But anyway, the other big thing is it's called QuickType. So they improved the virtual keyboard on the iPad as well. And the cool thing is you can use the keyboard like a trackpad, which is exactly from another jailbreak app that's been out for years. So the jailbreak community has actually done quite a bit over the lifespan of iOS as a whole. They've taken a lot of features from the jailbreak community. So I'm hoping those jailbreak developers have gotten some love and recognition from Apple, because really a lot of the best features of iOS have come from the jailbreaking community. Let's see, the other cool thing, along with the multitasking, there's now where you can scroll sideways. It looks exactly like a lollipop. So essentially it's Android Lollipop, except instead of being vertical, you scroll horizontal to show all your apps in like a kind of a window view. So again, a lot of features here taken from other platforms and OSs, just optimized for Apple, which again, I'm grateful for all these features. I think they're awesome, but it's just, the only frustrating thing is that it took Apple so long to get them. I mean, they're like 2-3 years late to the game on many of these features, which is a total bummer. But one cool thing they did with iOS 9, iOS 8 essentially is over 4 gigabytes when you download to install that, but they reduced the size of iOS 9 all the way down to 1.3 gigabytes, which is pretty impressive. So I do give Apple kudos there. That is pretty awesome. And then along the lines of iOS, the next thing, there's an app called, or a program called Swift, and I'm not a developer, but that's essentially what developers use. But now Apple made it open source, and if you watch the WWDC and the highlights, that got the loudest ovation and applause, because obviously all the folks in the audience were developers. But now Swift is open source, which is kind of a big deal for the developing community. And finally, well, not finally, but almost finally, the Apple Watch. Here I'll give Apple a lot of kudos as well. They're releasing Watch OS 2, and of course all these that I'm talking about from WWDC's keynote will be available in the fall. But Watch OS 2 actually had some really good features, and it essentially it almost makes me want an Apple Watch, because it seems like they finally made it a viable, usable smartwatch. So there's a lot of cool features with OS 2. One called Time Travel is a direct rip-off though of Pebble Time. The Pebble Time interface, essentially where it works chronologically, you can go backward and forward in time, is what Time Travel is on Watch OS 2. So they took that, and again, they improved it, they made it better, but the idea is straight off the Pebble Time OS. And then you got nightstand mode also, which was a cool feature of Watch OS 2. So can essentially set your Apple Watch on its side and use it as a nightstand all night, which is pretty cool. And then yeah, just overall watch OS 2, lots of features. I mean, they demoed quite a bit, but it's a massive improvement. I mean, this really does make the Apple Watch one of the best smartwatches out there. So I do hand it to Apple there, give them kudos. It really makes me kind of want an Apple Watch now. But then I'd have to get another iPhone. But anyway, and then finally, one thing that was kind of a big bummer to me and a disappointment is at the end of every WWDC, they always do, oh, and one more thing. And I was hoping for some hardware, but unfortunately, it was just Apple's new streaming service called Beats One. And it's just basically Apple's version of Spotify. I mean, that's all it is. It's Spotify repackaged, redone for Apple. And I'm not a big music streaming person, so really this one didn't do anything or mean anything for me. But it's coming. And it's called Beats One, and it's basically Apple's version of Spotify. But with that, I mean, that's pretty much the Apple event in a nutshell. That was real quick, down and dirty. I mean, it was a 2.5 hour conference essentially, but those were the highlights that jumped out at me. And again, like I said, I guess better late than never is essentially what they should have called this. But I think the features are awesome, like I said, but there was really no innovation, nothing new. It's just taking other people's products, OSs, and repackaging it. And one thing Apple is good at is they'll take them and they'll make them better, which is kind of cool. But looking forward to getting these updates in the fall, especially the multi-window on the iPad. Now if they'll just allow me to use a mouse with it, you know, then it would be a pretty awesome device. But anyways, with that, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you got any questions, leave it in the comments below. Feel free to give me a thumbs up, and if you want to keep tabs when I do new videos, and if you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks.